Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Helicopter Pilot Study Group. My name's Mike, and I'll be your host this evening. Tonight, we have Tio presenting for us. Tio, what are we going over this evening?
I am Tio, a private pilot with my instrument rating, working on my commercial certificate. A subject that has been aimed has been privileges and limitations, and that's why I wanted to speak about it. Um, and just without further ado, let's get into it.
Excellent.
61-133. Oh yeah, anything to say? Okay, cool. 61-133, commercial pilot privileges and limitations. We can find this. This is the regulations and our aim book. All of these are PDFs that I've downloaded just to be able to mark on them. They're all current, so make sure that we are actually seeing the stuff that it is current. So commercial pilot privileges and limitations. We have privileges. Person who holds commercial pilot certificate may carry persons or property for compensation or hire. Person is qualified in accordance with this part and the applicable parts of this chapter will apply to the operation. Now, what does that mean? Qualified in accordance with this part. With this part, talking about part 61. So under part 61, we have things like eligibility requirements, knowledge requirements, proficiency, our flight experience, do we need a type rating? This is all in part 61. Medical certificates, this is 123. Our flight review, right? Our recency of experience with the landings. Now we are carrying persons, so we need to make sure that we have those 3 landings in daytime and do a full stop in nighttime. All of those things are in accordance with this part, which is 61. Then it goes to speak of the applicable parts of this chapter that apply to the operation. That's where all the pain comes in my personal opinion. Now, before going through that, scroll down on our privileges and limitations. We have lighter than air, that's not for us. It's for us and B. So A is privileges, B is limitations. Instrument rating. If we do not hold an instrument rating in the same category or class, we have the limitation. Carriage of passengers for hire and cross-country flights in excess of 50 nautical miles or at night is prohibited. So we now have our commercial pilot certificate, right? But if we do not have our instrument rating, what this is saying is that we cannot do more than 50 nautical miles or nighttime flying without that. Then it goes on to say that it may be removed according if you do the requirements of 6165, which is basically you get your instrument rating, that limitation goes away. Now back to these beautiful applicable parts of this chapter that apply to the operation. Okay, chapter 1. Chapter 1 on subchapter G of the Title 14, we have air carriers and operators for compensation or hire. This is where all the headache comes in. We can go down into a rabbit hole of things. Am I doing all the noise or is that something else?
No, there's just some things going on with the channel. You're good, man.
Okay, cool. All right, sweet.
Sorry, Tio. Yeah, I'm having trouble watching your stream, so I'm trying to figure out how to get that screen on.
Oh, it's all good. I was just wondering if that was something I could change or not. Fine, I'm good with it. All right, anyways, part 119, chapter G, air carriers and operators for compensation or hire. Now, this is going to be our guidelines for what type of certificate we're going to be needing for our operations. I do want to specify for these operations, right, commercial operations. There's a difference here. There's a big difference of what is a commercial operation and our privileges of commercial certificate. We have an AC, a really nice AC, 61-143. This one is pretty new-ish. It's about a lot of things. One of the things that it does, I really recommend you guys check this out if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
We have some definitions which we can also find in our part one, right, um, of our aim. But it also speaks, among other things, about this distinction between privileges and operational authority. So privileges and limitations are separate and distinct from the operational authority required to conduct the flights. You have a commercial certificate. You can act as pilot in command of an aircraft for compensation and may carry persons and property to the hire, but most of these commercial operations will require that certificate under 119, unless there has been, or there is an exception. And I want to speak a little bit of that exception, or one of those. There are some. Before we go into this part 119, and I want to speak of that with an example. So
Interesting.
you have this person. Yeah.
So if I may,
Yeah.
so just because you have your commercial certification, you still need this Part 119 license, essentially saying like that you have to have a commercial license and then a commercial company license or something like that.
Yeah, so to have the commercial license, right, you do need to have everything applied for Part 61. And that's what we were talking about with the flight review, all of that stuff. But then when you want to have a company now, so there's a difference between having what is called operational control, right? There's a difference between commercial operation and a commercial activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Part 119 will be, which is what I have pulled up here, it's going to be all that requires for these commercial operations.
Okay.
What I found is, by the way, maybe I should start by saying I'm not an aviation attorney. All of
Yep.
this is up for interpretation, and this is a very complex subject. And if you're going to be diving into the world of doing more than just working for someone or knowing what certificate that person that you're hired for has to have. So if
Mhm.
you want to start providing aircraft and crew, then definitely get an attorney because it's going to save you a lot of pain if you get that attorney before you have to deal with lawsuits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that that we as military aviators uh, really don't get into. I mean, there's guys that I work with that don't even have a commercial aviation license where they're flying, they're racking up hours, but they're not they don't have an FAA license. It's an interesting spot that military pilots live in. And again, we definitely don't dive into the idiosyncrasies of air carriers or commercial operators. So it's good to make that distinction.
Yeah, and I was actually wondering about that, so thanks for bringing it up. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to touch on. So Tio was talking about Part 119 entry.
Mm-hmm.
Triana, you said about like a Part 119 certificate. It's not necessarily that we get a 119 like endorsement or certificate.
Okay.
119, from my understanding, more describes the type of operation that we are and are not allowed to do
Okay.
as commercial pilots under Part 91. So we call them like
Gotcha.
Part 119 exemptions, is what we like to call them, because as Theo was greatly explaining, once we get into common carriage, or I'm scrolling down that AC that you said, start getting into like a different operational category. I'm putting air quotes.
Yeah.
Then we to move into like a Part 135, or it's not very common in helicopters, but like a Part 121 or a Part 133. So then there's different rules that we have to fall under.
Mm-hmm.
So this 119 describes what we can do without having to go the extra mile under the different parts, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay.
Absolutely. But something that I want to put in that is not in Part 119. So even before diving into everything that is involved in this giant world of air commerce that is 119, we have our exemptions, but even outside of this scope of things, By the way, this is a nice flowchart that I found published by the FAA, which is nice to have because there's a lot of really good flowcharts that I will reference to
Mm-hmm.
at other times as well. Once this builds up, there are other flowcharts, but it's nice to have one that comes from the FAA because then we can see, okay, so any confusion that's about the subject, because at least we're getting it from this great source, right? Okay, so before I want to get even into what the world of air commerce is, I want to bring out this example of not having operational control. This means if this person, let's call it John, owns an aircraft, he's not a pilot, right? But he owns the aircraft and wants to search for a commercial pilot, for that pilot, say me, to take him across the mountain to see his family, he can hire me as a commercial pilot. I can exercise my privileges, right? Because there's a distinction between those privileges that I have as a commercial pilot, and because this would be a dry lease, right? So he has the operational control. He provides the aircraft, I provide the services. And him, so having the operational control, is not getting paid for that service. He's paying me. So this would not even be into all this world of air commerce. Now, jumping into this wet lease and dry leasing, something that would tell you, yeah, you do need this certification under Part 119, but it is like you were saying, there's 119 is the guidance that will tell us if we make 121, 125, 135, 129 operations for foreign commerce. But so getting into that would mean we are providing now the aircraft and the crew, and we're getting paid for it. So the difference lies in if I am providing the aircraft and I'm providing the crew, me or some other pilot, and getting compensated, then I'm very likely going to need to have this certification. Going back to Part 119, applicability, all this new language that is in my brain, we have air carrier, commercial operator, air commerce, language that we have to familiarize ourselves a little bit at least to get a better insight into what all of this is. So for that, we have definitions. Part 1, on our far aim, carrier. An air carrier person undertakes direct by lease. We talked a little bit about leases and how that changes things, and to engage in air transportation. If we go back down to air transportation, all of this will make sense a little bit later. I will try. Air transportation means interstate, overseas, or foreign transportation of air transportation, or the transportation of made by aircraft. This is just so much language. Air commerce is pretty much the same. That word, air transportations, means interstate, overseas, foreign air commerce. This is the exact same thing, but air commerce also envelops more things than that. So instead of reading all of this mambo jumbo of letters, we can go back to that FAA publication that speaks of air commerce, and here we can see a little bit more, but a bit more understanding. Under the big bubble of what air commerce is, we have what an air carrier is and what a commercial operator is. So going back to our 119.1, applies to air carrier, commercial operators, or both, in air commerce or common carriage. This is, again, a lot of words that are new, but which we have to kind of familiarize ourselves with, unfortunately. Right. So we have defined a little bit what an air carrier is, involved in transportation, commercial operator. Now, air carriers are going to be mostly 121 or 153 or 135. How it differs with commercial operators, which can also be mostly under 135, is that air carriers are interstate, right? In our definitions, we had the is an air transporter is interstate, overseas, or foreign air commerce, or the transportation of made by aircraft or any operation. That's an air carrier. How that differs from a commercial operator is basically that the commercial operator, for compensation hire, engages in the carriage of aircraft in air commerce or personal authority other than as an air carrier. complicated. Commercial operated is basically not an air carrier. So that means that it's not engaging in air transportation, meaning all this going up and down, interstate, overseas, or foreign air transportation. What does all of this mean? Means that the certificates are going to be slightly different. The air carriers are mostly going to be doing interstate, which means going from one state to the other, foreign operations, going from places within the United States to places without the United States. Now, commercial operated is going to be intrastate. This is going to allow the limitations to be a little bit less strict than being a direct air carrier. But again, we don't really need to get into all of this. This is me getting into that rabbit hole, which I was hoping not to get into. But yeah, there's just so much on it. What we do need to know is the difference is if we're going to be doing common carriage or private carriage. Private carriage is common carriage not involved. There's another advisory circular. This one is old, 1986 kind of old. 120-8, still being used today because it has our differences between private carriage versus common carriage. And this is where we get into even more words that we need to know. Air carrier becomes a common carrier when it holds itself out to the public or to a segment of the public as willing to furnish transportation to any person who wants it. So you are now holding out, which it goes on to say that there's 4 elements: holding out of a willingness to transport persons or property from place to place for compensation, right? Now, holding out, basically you are selling these services, right, of the aircraft and the crew, and you are promoting that you're selling this package to the common public. If you're doing this, you are a common carrier, and you will go under the regulations of common carriage, which are a lot more stringent than what the non-common carriage or common carriage not involved, often seen as private carriage as well. But being a private carrier does not mean, unless there's exceptions, that you can be under Part 91. And this is something that I have been thought of. Private carriage means under Part 91. But the private carriage, we look at, see where you are. Again, so many regulations. 119.23. Engage in passenger carrying operations, cargo, or both with airplanes or powered lift when common carriage is not involved, right? We're talking about non-common carriage. Or then again down here of less than 20 seats and less than 6,000 pounds, then it's going to be either 125 for 20 seats or more, or 135 for 20 seats or less, which is basically what we're mostly going to be concerning ourselves with as rotorcraft, right? Which is different than owning the aircraft, right? And hiring me as a commercial pilot, you take him to his mother's house. He can hire me for that. That is not air commerce. On the AC, which it specifically says what a common carrier is, it's still speaking of being a carrier. Being a carrier means that you are in this commercial operation, right? Again, even if we are not holding out, which is what means to be a private carrier, a carriage for hire which does not involve holding out is private carrier. Okay, I feel like I'm saying a lot of words here, but we'll try and zoom out a little bit again. We're back in the world of commercial operations. We are targeting the common public, right? That is the main difference here. The more that we are targeting more people, the more limitations we're going to have, right?
So does that
private.
Does that mainly have to do with advertising then? Just thinking, going the difference between public and private carriers, trying to determine the difference there, because it would seem that anyone in the general public could hire a private carrier. I guess I'm just looking for a definition between the two there. It's there seems to be a bit of nuance that I'm not quite grasping here.
It's 100%. It is about holding out. It's about holding out. It is about who is making the money.
Mm-hmm.
It is so. Say again, this Joe guy that owns the aircraft, he's not making any money. He's hiring a commercial pilot to take him this one place. That does not go into what is carried. It's not a common carrier. It's not an air carrier. That is just a contract. You can say a private contract, which is way different than a private carriage. Private carriage involves this whole world of going into the public. Is a company, or even Joe. Let's go about Joe again. If Joe now has his own helicopter and has his own pilots, right? So now he doesn't hire me to take him places. He hires me to take the public, right, out into the world and do different operations. Then that is either it's carriage, and that goes into the world of either common carriage or private carriage. If he's holding out, it's going to be a common carrier. Again, holding out is advertising. And that's where we go again to this advisory circular, AC 120.12.12a, in which it expressed that holding out is all of this willingness to transfer persons or property from place to place for compensation or hire, right? He's not just wanting to carry himself into his family's house. He now provides aircraft and crew to the people, and he is holding out. He is putting that out there on the internet or emails. There's many ways of holding out. This other AC, which speaks the 61.142, also has terms of holding out with examples, which are actually very nice to see. It's right, holding out. Let's go to examples. So private pilot wants to post a note in a specific date and time. So he posts in the FBO bulletin, right, that he's going to be or she's going to be traveling to Long Island in this case, right? She's going to be traveling to Long Island at a specific date, and she is willing to do the pro rata reimbursement, right? She's private pilot, we cannot money from it. She wants to do a pro rata reimbursement, but she's targeting a limited host. So even though she is putting it out there, does not mean that she's holding out, because she's targeting a limited amount of people, and she's under the pro rata reimbursement of expenses. And there's a lot more examples of holding out in this advisory circular 61.142. Maybe a little bit. So explain a little bit the difference between being a carrier in the commercial world and being a commercial pilot, exercising your privileges of your commercial certificate. Maybe it's it's very confusing, and this is also the way that I see it, right? Yeah.
I could certainly see your recommendation to get an attorney if you plan on starting a business in aviation.
So let's go back to this beautiful flow chart. Right, again, starting from the beginning, the world of air commerce. We have common carriage, which means we are holding out to the public, right? So if we're doing that, we are going to be acting as an air carrier or a commercial operator, right? Again, the differences are on the certificate that we're going to need. Air carrier needs an air carrier certificate. Commercial operating certificate, which we do. Let's get back to it. So operation certificate, basically it's going to be intrastate, so within the state, and air carrier certificate is going to be within other states, depending on which type of operation you're going to be doing, right? If it's 121 or 155, under 121, you have domestic, supplementary, or flag operations, right? And then all this wording we can also find under Part 110, right? We have domestic operations under 121. We have basically 9 passengers or more than 7,500 pounds within the United States. So basically domestic. That is from a place within the United States to a place within the United States. Then you have flag operations, which is airplanes that currently scheduled operations, more than 9 passengers, more than 7,500 pounds to any point within the United States, and any point then that is outside of the United States. Again, all of this we don't really need to know, but just to know that there's different requirements and certificates for things. If we're gonna be under common carriage holding out, we're gonna have a lot more limitations, either as a direct air carrier or as a commercial operator, in rotorcraft, which is what we will be doing. Again, holding out, you're targeting a big amount of people. That's the key difference here. The holding out as that makes you a common carrier. So as a commercial operator in rotorcraft category, you're either going to be in part 135 or mostly going to be in 135 commuter or on-demand operation. Now, commuter and on-demand, we also have those under part 110, those definitions of the FAR. Basically, the difference is that commuter is a scheduled operation, and you have like 5 round trips per week, 9 seats or less, 7,500 pounds or less, and then on demand, which basically the arrival and departure time and location is negotiated with the customer. Again, all of this can be found under part 110, commuter. What I was saying, at least 5 and trips, and on demand, this can be found under part RA. And we have common carriage, not involved. So basically, private carriage, non-common carriage. Now we're not holding out. Today's examples, common carriage airliner. That's the classic 121. We have big airplanes that are taking a lot of people. We have Alaska Airlines that put all their airplanes, all their pilots, and they say, hey, we're going at this time, to this point, we're taking off from here, we're going there. That's air carrier 100%. They're holding out here. But then private carriage, what would that mean? That means basically, let's go back to this AC. So private carriage. On private carriage examples, we have an oil rig, right? They want you to take them from the oil rig to the shore, and from the shore to the oil rig. They want to hire you, right? But this is private carriage, but does not mean that you can work under Part 91. You still need your 135 certificate for it, right? Because you are a carrier. What's happening here is this oil rig will be providing, or you are providing to the oil rig, the aircraft and the crew, right? So you're gonna be getting compensated for it. That makes it carriage, right? You're not holding out, which makes it private carriage. But it's basically you're not targeting the common public. Your aircraft is not available for anyone that wants to go to that oil rig. It's only the employees of that oil rig that you'll be taking. That is a private carriage, a contract under private carriage.
Okay.
Now this AC says you can have. It's been found that 3 contracts is private carriage, right? This means that hey, you have that private contract, generally long term, right? This is not a one-time thing. Now someone else comes in, the prince of whoever says, hey, I know you're a 135 certificate holder. Can I hire you as a private carrier to do whatever it is that he wants to do? Another private carriage contract, right? Again, you're not targeting the common public. You're not holding out. People are reaching out to you. Now, you can have 3 of those contracts, right? After that, it becomes iffy. Carrier operating 18 to 24 contracts has been held to be a common carrier, right? Okay, so the FAA says 18 to 24 is common carrier. It says that 3 has been found to be private carriage. In between, it depends on
Yeah.
the mood. I don't know, right? I really don't know. But it's saying that after 3, it's gray area, right?
So in your example of providing transportation to oil companies back and forth between their oil rigs, you could be working with up to 3 different oil companies, and it still be considered private carriage.
Yes. And then
Interesting.
after that,
Okay.
they're going to be looking closer. They're going to be like, are you available for everyone at the public? Are you going to be
Mm-hmm.
delving more into other areas of the public, right? After that, it can become common carrier. And the difference is that there's a lot more limitations placed on common carriers than there is in private carriage. And so
Mm-hmm.
people with private carriage have tried to be a private carriage when they were targeting more people or they were holding up, right?
Okay.
Which is when things get a little bit iffy with the FAA. All right, let's see, back to our flow chart. So that is private carriage, right? Common carriage not involved.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 asterisks here. Includes non-common, private, no compensation, no carriage of persons or cargo. Compensation is also a very tricky subject. Compensation, we have another thing here on 10.2 that says compensation. Maybe it's not here. No, it must be then somewhere else. Maybe, it's in the AC. And purpose, here we go, compensation. This is not 12012 rule. This is a new one, CC1142 from 2020. It has those same definitions from the part 1 of the part aim. It also speaks of compensation. Receipt of anything of value that is contingent upon the pilot acting as pilot in command. Right now, even pro rata sharing, right? As a private pilot, this is another confusion that I maybe shouldn't be bringing in, but you're a private pilot. You're providing the aircraft. You are providing the crew. And you are getting compensation. This is pro rata sharing of expenses, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that is actually something that excludes you. You would be a carrier if it wouldn't be on the exclusion of private pilot privileges and limitations, right? Going back down to private pilot. If we pay less than we may not pay less than the pro rata share of the operating expenses. So as a private pilot privileges and limitation, we can get paid for part of the expense if that expense is only fuel, oil, airport expenditures, rental fees. We can get part of that compensation, right? But that is compensation. And because it is in this privileges and limitations, we are not acting as an air carrier, even though we are now providing aircraft and the crew. But because it's here in 113, we can actually get some compensation. The compensation is not revenue. Compensation can be a whole bunch of different things. Compensation can be goodwill. Compensation can be, even if you are saying anything of value, you are giving a free ride, right? You're not charging anyone, so it wouldn't be compensation, right? You're giving a free ride to this business person that you know. But this business person is actually going to very likely want to hire you after you've taken them for free, right? It's for free. And if it's for free, I don't need an air carrier certificate. But that is compensation because it can be seen as future economic benefits, right? So compensation is a whole other world of pain.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm going into the rabbit hole again.
No,
Okay.
this is good. I mean, this is part of why we've got this study group. We want to dig into the nuances. We want to talk about things that might not be so plain just reading it yourself. It's about the interpretations. It's about the discussion.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think, to dive further into the definition of the compensation because as I teach it personally, I say, oh, like that example that you gave, oh, if you're doing this via pro rata share as a private pilot, you are not receiving compensation for this flight. And I think it was good that you distinguish between revenue. So, yeah, they're not going in the green, but they are getting, if they're split it four ways, they're getting 3/4 of the cost of this flight hour covered. But yeah, they're not putting money in their pocket. So that's interesting.
And I imagine a lot of that comes to play when you're looking to do hour building assignments, so to speak.
Reading assignments?
Jobs, I guess, where call it your real compensation is is the skills that you're building from flying the aircraft. So, like, you get some compensation from the people that you've taken as passengers, but you're still paying a part of the expense. But really, what you're getting from that contract assignment or whatever you want to call it. The definition of the word escaping my brain right now, but really what you're getting is you're getting the hours out of the agreement.
Which I have read that also can be seen as compensation. It's all up to interpretation.
Yeah, which is wild in of itself. It's like then how are you supposed to build hours if I guess just renting the aircraft and going and doing traffic patterns or cross countries,
I think that's where interpretation comes into play, which means you can definitely do that, and it's not going to be a bad thing if you are building your hours, right? But I'm going to post all of these places where I've been finding this stuff into the chat as well. Um, yeah, you can definitely build up your hours, but it's up to the interpretation as well. I mean, most of the time, they're not even going to be looking into this unless you are starting to generate a lot of people, you're starting to involve a lot of the public into it. They're not going to be looking too hard at it. But, if they do, it's up to the interpretation of were you trying to figure out what you were doing? That does carry weight. So if you contacted the FISTO and they gave you whatever answer, or they, who knows if they actually gave you an answer. You tried, right? And they gave you an answer that you interpreted wrong because nothing is clear, right? Ever. You did that attempt. They can say, okay, you did this wrong, but we see that you tried to at least, you attempted to not have broken the law. Let me help you in doing this the right way. There has been cases like that.
So something like a good faith clause then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as I'm looking on the screen that you have here, talking about hour building assignments or jobs, I see some of the exemptions there to 119, and I noticed the nonstop commercial air tours as an exemption. What would actually what would be an example of that?
Right, so that is the next subject that I was going to go through is exactly that, the exemptions that we can do. So those exemptions, we do not need an air carrier certificate, right? What you mentioned, the non-stop air commercial tours, that is part of those exceptions. We have 11 things that we can do, which we do not need to have all those painful, strict limitations and requirements of being a Part 121, 125, 135. We don't need those. We can act under Part 91. That's what these exemptions are, right? Non-stop commercial air tours is one of those, as long as we comply with all of these things. We have standard airworthiness certificate, seat configuration of 30 seats or fewer, maximum of 7,500 pounds, begin and end at the same airport, right? So from point A to point A, you have to have done 25 such miles. So if you were to want to do a non-stop commercial air tour, right, from Seattle to, I don't know, 60 miles away from there, that is not involved. Even though it's a non-stop commercial air tour, If it's more than that 25 such a mile, it wouldn't be involved in this exemption. So yeah, you can do non-commercial air tours, compliance with having all of these things, letter of authorization, basically one of those exemptions. Student extraction, this is a big one. The flight schools, they can hold out, they can be under Part 91. They still need requirements such as drug testing and such. There are requirements for it, but they can hold out and provide student instruction. You as a CFI can hold out to be an instructor because it is under the exemption of 119.1E. Right? And we have a whole bunch of, this is where aerial work comes in. So firefighting, they don't need to be in any certificate other than complying with 6191. They can do that without 119, right? Construction and repair work, power line, all of these things are basically things that we can do without that certificate. And this is something that you should know in your check, right? All these exemptions. And for this, we use power lift flights within 25 such a mile, complying with all of this stuff. We do have acronyms for it. I'm not sure if you guys heard of this. There might be other acronyms. These are the ones that I've seen. Part 119.1 exemptions, 6 fine Ps, right? On 6, we use 2 was font, and for this A, we use tab shop. This is just, flashcards and memorizing it. So 6 means you can have 6 passenger flights, complying with you're carrying 3 passengers within 25 such miles, approved by administrator, standard category aircraft. The piston needs to be notified 72 hours in advance, compliance with 100 hours. Basically, all of this stuff you have to memorize. The pain of I'm assuming, being a pilot in the flying people, memorizing all these things. So, 6 fine Ps. We have farrier training flight, instruction, non-stop commercial air tours within 25, all these things that we need to memorize, right? You need to know, and I can put this up there in the comments as well. It's just the one that we use, the one that has helped me memorize it, right? Again, memorizing kind of a pain, but as pilots, we do have to memorize all the acronyms. There are 6 passenger flights. All of this basically is what is set here in 1 week. I could sit here and speak about all of them, but yeah, they are there to see. So emergency mail service, right? I don't know what that means, but I guess I could do that. And interesting one, provisions under 91.321, right? That actually, if you click on that, takes you to election candidate. So it's telling you that if someone that's an election candidate, his helicopter broke down, and you want to, he heard of you that you have a flight school, right? And he's like, oh, you have a helicopter, can you take me somewhere? Then yeah, it's an operation conducted under this provision, which is in the exception of 119.1E, so you can do that, right? Unmanned aircraft, something, basically under this, you can do these things if you are not also doing something that's called dual purpose. This is something that comes into play. So 119.1E, you have these exemptions, but you can only do them one at a time, right? What does this mean? Say you are doing an air work operation, aerial work, right? You are doing power line or pipeline control, right? If you wanted to do this, say there's a leak in the pipeline, the guy next to you, the one that's inspecting it with his thermal camera or whatever, he's like, oh, I need to go down, I want to look at it. Then you're going to be landing. And as you're going to be landing, then that's going to be a dual purpose. It's not going to be pipeline patrol anymore, it's going to be dual purpose because you're going to be landing in a different spot that's not the first spot that you went to. There's another exemption that talks about, what's it called? It speaks of aircraft and human needs. What if this pipeline is 7,000 miles long, 500 miles long, right? You cannot get there with one fuel tank of the R22, right? So you have to land, you have to fuel, and that's okay. That is not your work. But if you land, the guy that was doing the pipeline patrol goes and explores the area, and that you have just transported that passenger somewhere. Or if you land and drop him off, you drop him off at the end of the pipeline instead of bringing him up back to the original place of work. And you're engaging in transportation. Dual purpose, you cannot do that. But you can fuel in interim stops, and you can stop for sleeping. That's human needs. You can stop for eating. Again, all of these things that come into play with, what are you actually doing? How much can they tell that you did? A lot up to interpretation. So very important, 119.1e. There is those exceptions. No dual operations can be done. Right?
Interesting. So in the case of the pipeline patrol there, I'm seeing in Section 5 and Section 6, so you're saying that you can't be out on a pipeline patrol, see that there's a leak, and then do repair work all in the same
Yeah.
flight. Interesting.
Yeah, for some example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same as we have one that is aerial photography, right? Aerial photography. You can take someone, you can have him take pictures. And I heard from my instructor, so I don't know how real this is, but there is this company that has managed to make their non-stop commercial air tours
Mm-hmm.
a little bit longer than the 25 statute mile radius because they were under aerial photography. They were giving the customers cameras, and under the aerial work of aerial photography, they were managing to go over the 25 statute mile radius, but that's, don't quote me on that, I don't know. That would be an example of things you can do. But if you're taking pictures and then you land because you have to fuel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that person still taking pictures in the ground, that's not aerial photography anymore. He's doing other things that are not aerial photography, so that's dual purpose.
Interesting. Yeah, they again the nuances just seem so minute. It would definitely make sense to have a attorney on retainer.
Yeah, and again, like how much on the FAA, like what are you going to explain about that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how are they going to know that the guy didn't take pictures? Like, all of these things are all just like weird examples in some way. I don't know. It's how it's written down as well. I guess you have to put a line somewhere, right?
Yeah, and again, kind of going back to the point that we made earlier, you have to be operating in good faith, at least making the attempt to abide by the regulations and do the right thing. And if what you're doing, you submit for review, and they say, well, okay, yeah, you're kind of doing this thing, but really it falls more under this, and you should either stop doing that thing or do it this way. Then it sounds like they're not gonna hem you up for what you were doing, as long as you make the corrections afterwards.
Yeah, I'm also taking into account that anti-authority is a thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I can try and do things different, but knowing that most of these rules, if not all of them, I don't know, are there, or most of them are there to protect you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's probably been some accidents, and that's why this regulation came out, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I think comes to consideration as well.
Oh yeah, like the example there of trying to do multi-use or to do more things at once than or to doing two things at once. It probably came about from someone trying to do too much with their aircraft.
Yeah, and that of the dual purpose, there's many layers of interpretations. Is conversations between let's say still people in which they are asking these questions, and that's where some of that. And when these operations have a dual purpose, it's both pipe and patrol and transporting passengers for compensation and hire. That's the example that I was talking about. The guy went to asking if he could drop off the person all the way on the other side.
Yeah.
Does not apply to the exception of 119.1. And I will also put in some letters of authorization on the app. And something, so this is another flowchart which I really enjoyed and seems a lot less complicated than the one that I was chatting about, right? You just kind of like put everything together in an easier way than all the legal mambo jumbo. Are you getting paid? Are you getting paid for the flight? If you're not going to get paid, you're under Part 91, right? You don't need your certificate. It's not a commercial operation. You can be a private pilot. You need at least your third class medical, basic med. Right, you can do that. Are you getting paid? And if you are getting paid, you ask yourself, are you carrying persons for property from place to place? Are you holding out? If you're doing those things, you are going to be a common carriage. There's this operational control question that comes up as well, which comes down to that leasing arrangement. That example I said about this Joe person, he owns the aircraft. Doesn't you are providing the crew, then he's in operational control. That is a dry lease, right? And a dry lease means you don't have operational control, so he would have operational control. If you don't have operational control, you go back to the limitations of our commercial pilot, previous limitation 61.133, which says that if you're IFR rated, then you don't have any limitations. But if you're not, you cannot carry people, you cannot carry tow more than 50 nautical miles if this amount is farther away from that. You can get paid for it if if it's less than that, or if you have that IFR rating, if you do not have that operational control, right? Do you have operational control? Usually comes down with like, is it a wet lease or a dry lease? If it's a wet lease, so if you are providing the aircraft and the crew, then means you have operational control, you're most likely going to need an operating certificate, right? You can go, is it scheduled? If it's scheduled, it can be Part 129. If it's not scheduled, Part 135. All the meanings of Part 121, 135. You can find on our, 119, what is it? No, Part 110, Part 110.2. You have all the definitions in 35, it's commuter operations, and if you have at least 500 trips, hour lift, so you can have all of those definitions there. About what 135 is, 121 or 121, 129, 135. 121 is basically air carriers, domestic operations, flag or supplemental. Those are if airliners that if they're going to be going to from United States to the United States, they're going to be operating as a domestic. If they're going to be from the United States or somewhere else, it's going to be a flag operation. 129 is foreign operations. So 135 is commuter and on demand. The scheduled operations is 5 round trips per week. Demand is basically it's arranged the departure time and location with the customer. Okay, I'm getting into the nitty-gritty. And then we have the 119.1 exemptions, right? If you are within this 119.1 exemptions without doing it dual purpose, you can operate under Part 91. Then if you're not holding out, this is where private carriage comes into play, right? Non-common carriage. Private carriage, if you have more than 20 passengers and more than 6,000 pounds, Part 135. If you have less than that, Part 125. Again, big difference between private carriage and Joe owning an aircraft. he doesn't know how to fly, he hires a commercial pilot. As a commercial pilot, I can get hired so that he owns the aircraft. He is not getting paid. He's paying the commercial pilot who's exercising his commercial um, privileges under Part 91. Now, on here as a private carrier, you're in the world of operating with the public. There is someone that owns an aircraft, someone that owns or like hires the crew, and they provide those to the public. Private carriage, they're not holding up, right? We have those after 3 contracts have been found to be private carriers. Um, less than 20 goes in here, more than 20 goes in there. If you are holding out, then you go into common carriage. More regulations, so higher regulations in, or limitations in common carriage than private carriage. I really like, and I will put this in here as well. This flow chart, I think that it will explain what I did in an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah,
I like it, man. It definitely helps to highlight the distinctions there. At the bottom there. So after we go through the IFR rated portion there, and the difference between 50 nautical miles, greater than 50 nautical miles, or at night, where does the distinction between no certificate needed and no passengers come from?
that is under. Let's see
I,
that one. Yeah.
I guess the difference I'm looking at there is
Mhm.
with the
Oh,
no
I got it.
passengers portion or versus like you wouldn't need a certificate. It just looking to
So
try to understand the
now
difference there
you
and
still
get
need.
clarification.
Oh, wait. See what you mean. Okay, so you don't need the certificate because in here you
Hmm.
don't have the operational control. This rating
Okay.
is for that world of you are working for Joe. You are exercising your privileges as a commercial pilot, right?
Hmm.
So you have the commercial pilot, first or second class medical. You can be under Part 91 because you do not have that operational control, which
Ah, okay.
means that you are not providing the aircraft and the crew. I saw this video. You can either paint the aircraft or paint the crew. You cannot paint both. If you're doing both, you're going to be needing a certificate for that. So the difference is that you are not on operational control. The person who is on operational control is not really getting compensated for it, or that's going to be a big difference. If he's going to get compensated, it may or may not be under Part 91, but it's going to be a lot harder to say that he's under Part 91 if he is getting compensated and
Mm-hmm.
helping people. But basically, the biggest difference is that you are, yeah, you do not have that operational control. And the IFR rating comes, this limitation comes from 13361, 133, privileges and limitations, which just says that if you don't have an IFR rating, you just cannot do 50 nautical miles for nighttime with passengers. So you can carry cargo. You can say, hey, you take these shirts from this place to this place. This
Mm.
guy
Yeah.
hires you, and he's not getting paid for it. He's paying you as a commercial pilot. You're taking his shirts, right, to his business or whatever it is, or checks, right?
Or tools or parts, you know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. You like that kind of, yeah, again, like, sorry if I went into the rabbit hole. I spent a lot of hours just because I, or I feel like I have a better understanding of it. I do
Mm-hmm.
not believe that I am fully true. There's a lot of videos out there. You have a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely share that video in the group chat there, and the examples you had there of six fine peas, those those snapshots,
Yeah.
if you will. Yeah, share those in the group chat, man. Those are great. These everything that you've talked about here tonight is stuff that we as military pilots don't even get anywhere near in the weeds on. We don't know this stuff, and for a lot of us that are considering flying on the civilian side, it's yeah, it's definitely eye opening. All the things that you have to consider there. Um, yeah, man, like excellent going into the weeds on everything. Really good. Good depth of knowledge there, and I certainly hope that with this recording, um, that people can kind of get an idea as to what they might be getting into, and hopefully avoid some pitfalls and doing things that might get them or their license in trouble.
Mhm. I might want to put a little bit more just to close it up.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
this first scenarios I also
Hmm.
I found, and we have spoken about some of this. You're flying your airline pipeline patrol, which consists of two inspectors. You discover protection between the pipeline. Can you land the helicopter? I guess we have spoken about this one. Can you land the helicopter? No, but that's a no. Ah, fuel stops are necessary to complete the mission. Can you land the helicopter to refuel? And we know that that's a yes, because we have that saying that this aircraft needs or human needs, you can do that.
Hmm.
Let's see, parachute operations. You own an A-Star from Molina. It's an airport around here in Portland. Customers from the local parachute crew are invited to perform an air jumping. It says, can you drop the skydivers over Hillsborough Airport from a non-stop flight departing in Molina? Distance is 24.8 nautical miles. Then you would go to the regulations, right,
Hmm.
of 119, going to be exceptions, in which it says parachute operations. Let's see, non-stop flights conducted within a 25 statute mile radius. We can do parachute operations within a 25 statute mile. It's an exemption. This is a silly question because it's saying 24.8 nautical miles. Nautical
Yeah.
miles and statute miles, different silly question. Also to take into account,
Uh,
it's a really, it wouldn't happen like that. But,
hmm.
just to bring that up.
Okay, making the distinction between statute and nautical miles. I could see too that people might be get tripped up over the parachuting portion of it. Of like, well, I mean, you're technically transporting them from one airport to another. They're just jumping out of the aircraft to
Yeah,
do
sure.
so. But no, that's covered under the parachuting operations. It was really a gotcha question on the difference between statute and nautical. Yeah.
Mhm. This is another silly scenario. You take this, you're doing aerial photography, you land to get lunch. Can you do that? Yeah, it's human needs, right? You're so hungry, okay, I guess I could go in there. And it says coincidentally means a business partner in the restaurant and he has some cargo. He has a camera that he had already bought or something. And he said, oh, can I take the camera back to his girl? I just met this guy
Mm,
by coincidence. No cargo, dual purpose. Silly questions, but
yeah.
it's worth mentioning.
Well, and
That's being there.
these are innocent things that you might not think of while you're operating under this sort of license. The restrictions that if if someone really wanted to get twisted and knots over it, yeah, it could get you in trouble. I mean, the realistic situation would be no one's probably going to know, no one's probably going to tell you, but technically you would be violating the regulations. And like I said, if someone really wanted to get twisted over that, they could.
Sorry we got over the time, but also I have a question for you. So, as a military pilot, how
Hmm.
much of the far aims do you have? Like, does that apply to you in any way?
Yeah, so a lot of the regulations that we get into specifically about like airspace and weather, IMC versus VMC. Let's see what else was I reading recently. Their altitude restrictions, specifically for like flying over like national parks and stuff like that. The 2,000 feet barrier there. Though I think that's more of a suggestion and not a hard rule. And I say that that it's more of a should, and like you really should. Essentially, that if it's not necessary for the mission that you're conducting, then yeah, absolutely maintain that separation over wildlife preserves. It just is one example, but we do generally abide by the FAA regulations and ICAO regulations whenever we're abroad. But there are some very specific military exemptions, and those are always on a case by case basis. As far as what we discussed here this evening, as far as limitations on what you can and can't do with your license, like I said earlier before we got started, there's there's guys that I fly with that don't have an FAA license. They didn't get their commercial rating after flight school. Didn't pay the $200 to go take the test and have all the paperwork done for them. So as far as like worrying about having your license put on the line, some don't even have that. But that's kind of circumvented by the fact that we have our own regulations that we need to abide by, and any violation of those, well, we're held accountable to those on top of the FAA regulations.
I feel like breaking the rules in the military is
Yeah,
kind of harsh.
yeah. Plenty of things that you could get your pilot and command orders pulled for. Really, the biggest thing is violating your risk assessment, your RCOP brief, doing things that you didn't say that you were going to do, and that's really more where our like rules and regulations and limitations come into, as far as what we can and can't do. Though there's a lot of leeway that we're afforded because we're military pilots. If just because we can go out and fly 25 feet or less above the ground out in the training area, if you try to do that off the reservation, or if you decide that you're going to just do that on your training flight and you didn't tell your briefer that, and your approver didn't know about it either, then yeah, you've done something risky that was not mitigated, was not talked about, going against and just doing something whatever you felt like doing that day. Violating your RCOP's one of the easiest ways to get your privileges as a pilot in command pulled, and quickly.
Right. So much stuff.
Yeah, but excellent presentation tonight, man. Really was some good information that you shared there. So with that, let me wrap us up here. Once again, thank you for joining us for another session of the Helicopter Pilot Study Group. Any last words for us, Tio?
Yeah. Other than actually, thank you for pushing me to do this. I feel like I just got into this group. I was like, yeah, I don't really know exactly what this is. Then like probably after I got probably, hey, you go next, do something. Um, yeah, even after that, a couple of days ago, I was like, yeah, it's your turn. I got a little bit of that push, and it actually helps a bunch to just get into the, um, yeah, put it out to other people. I learned a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's you hit the nail on the head, man. That's the whole point of the group here, is to make the presentation, to lead the study session of it. I'm very much a fan of the idea that teaching shows a level of mastery beyond knowing, and at the end of the day, all the best pilots become teachers. So that's what we should all aspire to be. Well, with that,
right.
thank you for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.